start with a story that has been dominating our news bulletins all through the day. Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Health has called for an urgent meeting with Health Minister Paahla and his team to find out what they will do about the Digital Vibes report. There have been calls for heads to roll after former Health Minister Mkhize was found to have at best acted improperly, at worst unlawfully. Let's delve deeper into the 134-page report. Our reporter Govan Whittles has been studying it and he joins us now. Govan, it is eyebrow-raising reading, isn't it? It really is distressing to read what happened. I know you've read through the whole report, so tell me what hit you hardest in terms of the shock factor.
Well, Sally, this report details how there appears to have been a coordinated attempt to not only secure the contract from the Department of Health to provide these communication services, but then after the contract was secured, to make sure that the money that the Department of Health was paying eventually landed up in the hands of people who were not doing communications work on the National Health Insurance rollout, but also on the COVID-19 pandemic response by the government. And that's best illustrated in a section of the report which details how the Digital Vibes owners allegedly approached a cash and carry, made a payment, an EFT payment of 3.4 million rand. That money was then put into boxes, and those boxes were allegedly taken to a filling station. And at the filling station, former Minister Mkhize's son appeared 6 times there to go and collect money from those boxes. And that, of course, is a textbook example of how money may have been laundered. But this is the SIU investigation, and there is some work for the NPA to do here, and there have already been calls for the NPA to pursue these charges quickly so that they don't have to reinvestigate everything that the SIU has found.
It was also very interesting how the report found that when the health minister, the then health minister, said that his family had not benefited from this, they found that he lied because he didn't delve deeply enough into the allegations. He didn't try and get to the bottom of the allegations himself.
Well, that was the answer that the former health minister had given the SIU's investigators when they put certain facts to him. But what's clear here is that after the initial questions were put to Mkhize regarding the involvement, particularly of his son, he didn't appear to want to explore all of the allegations in depth, and kept his answers to those questions, which were broad enough to necessitate him to actually find out what happened. He decided to keep his answers quite vague. And this is just going to be some of the areas which will have to be focused on by the Portfolio Committee in Parliament. They've now called for the current health minister, who was Mkhize's deputy, Dr. Paahla, to get to the Portfolio Committee for an urgent meeting, hopefully tomorrow, by the latest on Friday. They want to not only put certain sections of the report to the health minister and ask him what he'll do about it, but to get a clearer understanding of whether they can take action which would restore the credibility of the health department in the South African public's eyes, and particularly within the Portfolio Committee. On that Portfolio Committee is the Democratic Alliance, and they've already called for the officials who have been implicated in this report and remain in office to be placed on suspension pending a criminal investigation, specifically referring to Anbin Pillay there, who is accused of having acted unlawfully. And for those actions, the SIU saying there may be a criminal investigation which needs to follow. But let's have a look at what the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Health in Parliament had to say about this.
We have seen the resignation of the minister, for example, and also the suspension of the DG. That is as much as we had been aware of, and we had not had any knowledge of the real content of the report. And so, yes, I'm shocked to see it's a very large report. I think it's a 134-page report. And of course, I've been reading the report, and there is so much that I still need to really look at, since it touches on so many aspects of our public health system.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one because Anban Pillay, as you mentioned, but also the CFO, Ian van der Merwe, is also mentioned in that report, along with the technical committee that had to approve this tender, which we now know was basically a front for the former health minister to get his mates in. And tragically, it looks to loot and to take money from taxpayers. Two names not mentioned in the report I didn't see, Joe Paahla and Nicholas Crisp, who's the current acting DG. Let's hope it stays that way, because otherwise I would imagine the health department's going to have problems trying to keep afloat in the middle of a pandemic. But you've also looked, Govan, into the communications aspect of this, because ultimately the Digital Vibes was a communications report. It was meant, a tender, it was meant to first communicate around the national health insurance. Then its scope was changed to cope with COVID-19. What's interesting about this, of course, Govan, is that actually GCIS, government communications, was meant to be doing all of that. But tell us a little bit more about the communications aspects.
Yeah, that's actually one of the elements in the report, which states that the former Minister Zweli Mkhize was well aware that a standing cabinet memorandum stated that the communications not only on the national health insurance rollout but also on COVID-19 would be centralized to the GCIS government communications, and they speculate about whether or not he intentionally ignored that decision. Of course, that would be investigated further. And with regards to the people that have been implicated, it does appear that there was a network in place that not only facilitated Digital Vibes being awarded the contract, but after that then sought to benefit directly from it. And you mentioned communication, and one veteran communicator and expert, Chris Vick, points out that there wasn't much work done by Digital Vibes. In fact, they were paid 120 million rand. I spoke to Chris Vick, and he said it wasn't even R500,000 rands worth of work. Let's have a look at what he had to say.
I'm shocked at the level of complicity within the Department of Health around how Digital Vibes was brought in, how their so-called tender bids was handled, and the amount of money that they were invoicing to deliver virtually nothing. You know, there are so many layers of scandal. Whether it's how they got in, what sort of support they might have got from the minister, but even when they got the contract, the way that they were moving money around, bags of cash that they were laundering through supermarkets. I mean, it's a massive scandal. The biggest losers, of course, are the people of South Africa who needed the information that Digital Vibes have been hired to communicate. And to date, there is very little, if any, evidence that they actually did any of the work they were employed to do.
And I suppose now, Govan, it's really about what next. And interesting, Mkhize Kganyago, who speaks for the SIU that put together this final report, they are calling already for the DDG Anban Pillay to be arrested immediately. Let's take a listen.
If you look at the report, you will see a space where he wanted to appoint Tahira on a 800 rand per hour basis to deal with the issue of the NHI. And at that point, the Treasury said no to it. They wanted to immediately after that appoint Digital Vibes without following process. Treasury said no. But he then later on, when COVID happened, after they had done an SLA with Digital Vibes, he then wrote from his personal email an email to Tahira to say, give me a quotation to do the work on COVID. And the quotation was given at 35 million rand. Without following any process, he just appointed them at that amount, and things just went on. You could clearly see that he was forcing. But where we emphasize the criminality is the fact that he was involved, because Treasury said they must follow process, they then did a dummy process, SCM process, where they said, we are now going to do the process. They got 10 companies from the CSD, and only 2 of the 10 responded to this tender, and it was Digital Vibe and one other. Even after they realized that the other one has got more expertise, it is even charging less money, they then manipulated the scores to favor Digital Vibes. And that in itself shows the fraud that he committed.
All right, so that's the SIU's Mkhize Kganyago. You know, Govan, it's really interesting because this is coming at quite a crucial time. We know that the President has had this report for about 4 months. Releasing it now, we're, 4.5 weeks away from the local government election. Around 6 o'clock this evening, our very own Dan Moyane is going to be speaking to the President, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be top of the agenda. But where do you think this leaves the ANC and the President? Do you think it makes him look good because he looks like a corruption buster, or do you think it makes him look actually worse because this happened in his own cabinet?
It's a bit of both, actually, Sally, and what will be interesting here is the fact that former Minister Mkhize still has significant support within the governing party and was instrumental in securing the current president's victory in 2017 at Nasrec. And the former Minister Mkhize's constituency would certainly be looking towards whether Mkhize would be taking this report by the SIU to court in a review application in an attempt to set it aside. Remember that Bandile Masuku, the former MEC of Health in Gauteng, was implicated in the SIU report, and he took it to court, and that process also took quite a bit of time. But if the former Minister Mkhize does take this process to court, or this report to court, it then enables the ANC and particularly his constituency to welcome the minister taking this report on review and then maintain its public support for the minister pending the outcome of that review application. And in that scenario, the ANC would have to respect the former minister's right to take it on review and could not publicly condemn him based on an SIU report. At this stage, they still can't do that, and I suppose that's why we haven't seen a statement from the African National Congress yet, because both Zweli Mkhize and the other interested parties or implicated parties haven't indicated what they'll do with the SIU report. And even though this is damning, certainly appears very damning for his career in the public service, it works a little bit differently in the ANC, and we'll have to see whether or not this will translate into a real loss of support for Zweli Mkhize within the ANC, and whether it will hurt his chances of contesting a senior position at the party's national conference next year.
Govan Whittles, thank you so much for your expert analysis and insight into that report.